All right, welcome back.
Welcome back.
This is part 2 to the big announcement podcast. All right, originally we thought we were going to just do one big podcast, but I was like, you know what? Why don't we just break it up into...
We realized as Nathan was rambling on and on.
Well, you know how it is.
Yeah.
You get these headphones on, you get this microphone on, and you just start talking, and it just feels right, feels good.
Feels good.
And, an hour goes by, and you're like, well, we never talked about you. And so...
No, it was out of your heart that you wanted me to have a full time to tell the full story.
I really do. I didn't want you to have to cut anything short.
Yes.
Because like the story I just shared, your story is a prophetic swirl in itself.
Yes.
And it shouldn't be hurried through. So, but this episode is going to be, at least this first half is the Catherine Clark Show.
Yes.
Okay.
The Catherine Clark Show.
You like that?
I like it.
So why don't you just take it from here, and I will just sort of jump in when I feel it's right.
All right. Well, you started out with your big announcement.
That's right.
So I'm going to just say it.
Okay.
I am moving to Russia.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Did you just say that out loud?
I just said it.
Whoa.
I've said it out loud before, but it didn't quite turn out.
Okay, so this really is the whole story. This is something that you have felt for a while, and there's been different parts in your story where you felt like the Lord was really moving you to Russia, and you've been ready to go for a while now.
Yeah.
But I want to hear the whole story, because there's been some recent developments that has led to this podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, why don't you tell the story however you feel is right?
Okay. Well, yeah, I want to hit really shortly on why I first got involved with Russia, what I was doing there. So in college, I started to become friends with a girl who is from Russia.
And you can just tell the story right to me.
I know. I keep looking at the camera.
They can just listen in on the conversation we're having.
Okay, there we go. Let me just
So you're in college.
I'm in college, yeah. Started to become friends with a girl named Yulia, and started learning Russian on my own in my dorm room in college.
Wow. Well, that's unusual in and of itself.
Right. Very unusual. The first night I was learning it, I was just trying to learn a couple phrases to be able to say some funny things to my friend. Mm-hmm. And then I was like learning, I was like, oh, well, there's a different alphabet, so I should learn the alphabet first. And I was like, well, I should learn like the basic words for all the things in my apartment. And so in my dorm room, so I put like little index cards of all the words everywhere. And I was like, oh, well, I should learn, da 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 da. I just kept going, and then I looked at the clock, and it's 7:30 in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have an 8 a.m. class. So I stayed up all night, did not mean to.
Oh my gosh.
And from then I was just very interested in learning this language. And of course I was like, Lord, why am I so interested in this language? I went to visit, really felt the Lord move on my heart.
You visited Russia?
I visited Russia. Okay. I went to visit for about a month. Mm-hmm. And just really fell in love with the country, with the people. I loved the language already. Yeah. And felt really strongly, especially when I landed back in the U.S. That was kind of the breaking point for me, because I landed here and I felt like I left everything I wanted to do and be and everything. I just left it there. I just flown like 23 hours or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I would just fly 23 more to go back right now.
Wow. Yeah. And how old are you at this point?
I was 21.
Okay.
I was really young.
Yeah.
And so I ended up being invited to be a part of a team that was starting a church plant in St. Petersburg, one of the larger cities in Russia. Mm-hmm. And so I moved when I was 22 to be a part of this church plant team and kind of do whatever. My main thing was I'm just going to serve and fill in any of the gaps that I can. Mm-hmm. And the first year was really language acquisition, just learning how to live there. And then the second year and a half was doing this church plant, helping to grow the youth group, doing worship, doing slides, all the little things that you do in a church plant, just filling in. And towards the end of my time there, I really was faced with what do I want to do? If I could do anything in Russia, what would I want to do? What do I feel like the Lord wants me to do? What actually is my purpose for being here, if there is one? Yeah. And I kind of was drawing a blank, and I didn't have an answer to that, and really needed more ministry training. I was faced with my lack of maturity, my lack of knowledge of the word, my lack of just ability and capacity in a leadership role. So I was like, I want to go somewhere that is going to train me in ministry and really cause my roots to go really deep in the Lord. Yeah. And so that's actually why I ended up at the House of Prayer
in Kansas City.
Because we have IHOP U. It's a Bible school, university, training grounds for young people to
go into missions,
go into ministry, go into intercessions, all the different things. And so that was why I chose to come here to Kansas City. And I came just for 6 months. I was like, I'll be here for 6 months, and then I'll go back to Russia. Yeah. That was my intention all along. But 6 months turned into a year, turned into 2 years, and now it's 4.5 years later. Yeah. Okay. And in that whole process, in that whole journey, I really started holding on to Russia a little bit more loose until I feel like I was holding it with an open hand. And I got to the point where I was just committed to being here, doing what the Lord had me doing here until he moved on my heart to go back.
Because you felt like just because you were here didn't mean that you didn't feel called to Russia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was living kind of half here, half in Russia with my heart over there. Yeah. And I didn't mean to go into this, but I actually feel really passionately that those that feel like they're only in a certain place for a season, or they're supposed to be somewhere else, but they're just here in the meantime. Yeah. It is not emotionally healthy, or I think what the Lord has for you to not engage where you're at, to kind of be living somewhere else in your head and heart.
That's good.
It actually took me engaging in friendships, in investing in the ministry here in the House of Prayer, in the church, getting involved in local church, in ministries here like Exodus Cry and worship leading and different things to, I think, grow the way the Lord wanted me to grow.
Absolutely.
And I didn't do that the first year. And so I think that's part of why I stayed here longer is,
interesting.
I did not invest. I wasn't actually here.
It's almost like, I think so often we look at the different destinations and maybe the mountaintops is another way of looking at it. Yeah. And we just want to get to the next mountaintop, or like, I know that I'm supposed to be over there. Yeah. And yet the Lord, he loves that journey. Yes. Of how we get there. And that's like, that's I don't know if it's accurate to say, but maybe that's his favorite part. It's like, and that's what we spend a lot more time doing, it feels like, is in the in between, if you will.
Yeah. So my in between became just my life. Yeah. And
you're in Kansas City, you're operating, you're doing ministry in different capacities, and plugged in the community, leading friendship group. Yeah. Fighting human trafficking, doing worship teams, and doing prayer room, all kinds of different things. Yes. But it's not like what you feel like you're ultimately called to in a bigger way, and your heart's still beating for Russia as he marked you with in your younger years. Yeah. And so I was just, I had a job, kind of a marketplace job, you could say. I was working in a school as a piano accompanist. That was my daytime job. And then I was, friendship group leading, doing some things in ministry, but just living life. Yeah. And the Lord gives me a dream. And this is... where are we at the timeline? Approximately what year?
December 2019.
Okay.
Okay. Right before 2020.
Okay.
Like right before that year started.
Right.
And I get a dream of me basically being in St. Petersburg in Russia. And I would get lots of dreams about Russia. I still do.
Yeah.
But this one
because you're quite the dreamer girl, actually.
Well, thanks to my friendship with you, I've taken it a little more seriously. That's for sure.
That's awesome.
But this
so
dream...
you have a dream and you're in St. Petersburg in the dream.
In St. Petersburg. And my good friend Steve Cecil, who is a missionary still in Russia, he's in the dream and he's showing me, he goes, Catherine, we got a building for the House of Prayer here in St. Petersburg.
Whoa.
And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, we got it. It's right off of the main street. It's called Nevsky. It's right off of Nevsky. So he's showing me the place where there's going to be a House of Prayer in St. Petersburg. And I understood it to be like, this is the thing I'm starting. This is the thing I'm doing.
Oh my gosh.
I'm doing a House of Prayer in St. Petersburg. And this is the building. And Steve is helping me. He's showing me what he found. And there was a little more to the dream than that, but I woke up at like 6 a.m. and I am not a morning person.
I can attest.
Woke up 6 a.m. wide awake. Wow. I remember every detail of the dream. And I remember, like, I understood exactly what it meant. And so I really felt like this was kind of the direction that the Lord wanted me to move towards, of doing House of Prayer, doing it in Russia, and specifically helping to start House of Prayer in St. Petersburg.
Right.
So this happens, but that's about it. And I'm like,
so you have this one dream.
I have this one dream.
Yep.
And then it's a while, I think I'm getting the dates mixed up. It was actually a year before that.
Okay.
2018. So this is a long time in the making, all that to say.
Yeah.
And so that whole year, I'm just kind of waiting for something more.
Okay. So you're saying December 2018 is when you had this dream you just described.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
I'm kind of waiting for some more direction, waiting for something to happen. Nothing really starts to happen. And so I'm like, okay, this whole car analogy, I'm going to start to move. Yeah. And then we'll see if the Lord directs. We'll see what the Lord does.
Okay. And so what did that look like for you?
So that looked like, I was like, maybe I just plan a short-term trip. I'm just going to go for a summer and try to scope out St. Petersburg and see if there's any bit of, like, I don't know, a prayer movement happening, if there's anyone that would be interested in opening a House of Prayer in St. Petersburg. Like, I had no idea what I was reaching for, but I had this dream. I'd sat on it for a while.
Yep.
And I was like, maybe I need to just start, taking some steps and see what the Lord does.
Yep.
So I start kind of like talking to people, fundraising a little bit, like, yeah, I want to do just a short-term trip, like kind of feel out what there is in St. Petersburg. I have some contacts over in Moscow. They were going to help me to get a visa. And I was going to spend some of my time in Moscow because we had been there before. I was just kind of planning a summer, like 2 months.
Yep.
We go into a fast. We started a fast called the Jesus Fast.
Yep.
So this is 2020.
Our whole community did it.
Whole community did it.
Here in Kansas City.
I tried my best. I went for it as much as I could.
Yep.
And I remember Dave Sliker mentioned this. He's like, 40-day fast change your life.
Yeah. Yes, he talks about how 21-day fast will change your heart.
Yeah.
40-day fast will change your life.
And that has been my experience.
Me too.
Both times.
Wow.
The 2 times I've tried a 40-day fast and done really terribly at them. I want to make that point. Like, you do not have to be perfect for the Lord to honor your fast. You know, anything moves the heart of God.
Yeah.
And
because it's all voluntary.
It's all voluntary. Yeah. We're choosing to do it. And so 40-day fast, I'm like, great, this is awesome. We finish. And lots of fun stories from the fast. Nothing really to do with Russia that much. And then the day after my fast, there's a message from my contact in the House of Prayer in Moscow. And she's basically just asking, like, Catherine, would you consider moving and being with us here in the House of Prayer in Moscow to help run our internship and just be on staff with us?
Wow.
Would you consider actually moving? Rather than me doing this visa for you for the summer, would you consider this? And my immediate response was, no, I don't think I can. Like, I have work that starts in August. I was thinking all the things, and I was like, and I kind of feel like St. Petersburg is really my place. So
gotcha.
I'm not really going to think about it too much. And then I just keep thinking about it, though.
Okay.
I couldn't get it out of my head. I was thinking about it a lot, just like, I wonder why she's inviting me. And I think a lot of my conversations with you have helped me to start actually writing down my dreams.
Yeah.
And not just the ones I think are significant, but all the dreams. And maybe one day you'll understand why you had that dream, like yours with Todd White.
And the one I had in 2018 that didn't make sense until 2021.
Until right now, exactly. And so I just started looking over just different dreams I've had about Russia throughout the years of me living here in Kansas City. And I started to notice a pattern of a very common theme in a lot of my dreams where I was trying to get to St. Petersburg and I ended up in my dream in Moscow.
Gotcha.
And I was like,
and that's where the girl who just reached out to you with the email is living.
Yes, she lives in Moscow.
She's the leader of the House of Prayer in Moscow.
Yes. And so I started seeing this pattern and I'm like, interesting. The timing that this invitation came was the day after the Jesus fast, which was like the whole theme was Jesus went into the wilderness for 40 days. Coming out of these 40 days, he started his ministry.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I just did a Jesus fast for 40 days. Coming out of the 40 days, I had an invitation to do ministry, a wide open door. And I was like, okay, I'm taking note of this. It's all definitely, I'm just thinking about it all. Start talking to leaders. Very similar.
Yeah.
Start talking to leaders. Start asking what they think. I'm talking about leaders here, leaders from back home in Tulsa, where I'm from, leaders that are missionaries currently, like Steve and his wife, Kim. I talked to them over in Russia. Yep. And everyone's consensus was actually it makes a lot of sense if you're wanting to eventually do something in St. Petersburg with House of Prayer in Russia. Why would you not go to a current House of Prayer, serve with them, learn what House of Prayer is like in Russia, and then eventually over the years, like take a team, do something like it makes sense. It made sense in everyone's mind that could be the best first step of entering into doing the House of Prayer work in Russia.
Absolutely.
So I was like, okay, this is making a little bit of sense.
So that's the counsel that you're getting from your leaders.
It's the counsel I'm getting from my leaders. My good friend, Amy Wood, has a dream that I moved to Russia. And she tells me. Yeah. This is all within the span of like a week.
That you're getting kind of all this.
Connecting all these things, having these conversations. So it feels very like all these things are clicking one right after the other.
Yeah.
Right. Amy Wood has the dream. And then one day, I debated whether or not I was going to share this story, but I do want to share it.
Okay.
I was just here in my apartment. I decided to turn on Laura Hackett, like one of your clips from your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And just spend some time with the Lord. Very basic. I was not, super sad.
You're talking about
emotional.
A worship clip.
I'm just playing a worship clip off of YouTube of Laura Hackett. And I have my Bible open. I just kind of am wanting to spend some time with the Lord. I was not emotional at all. And within a span of like 5 seconds, I go from being completely unemotional to weeping, crying, one of the hardest like cries I've ever had. And I remember thinking like, that is so weird because I don't even know what I'm crying about. I could not explain what I was crying about. But like I said in the previous podcast, I think one of the biggest ways that I feel a manifestation of the Holy Spirit is when I start to cry. And so this was like, boom, it came out of nowhere. I started crying. And so I just like sit down on my floor here in this apartment because I couldn't even stand up. I was crying so hard or sit. I was just like, I'm going to sit down on the floor.
Wow.
I was crying into my hands And I kind of start to think about one of the biggest reasons why I would not want to go back to Russia, why I was so hesitant. Being that I'm still single. I'm like in my late 20s, and it's pretty scary thinking of going and doing missions as a single woman, especially in another country and all of that, all the things that goes into that. And I've done that before. I'm not like bright-eyed green with doing missions. I know how hard it is. I know how lonely it is. And so it was coming up in my heart, this thing that I had said to a couple people way back in the day when I was leaving Russia. I was like, I don't know if I'd come back single again. Like, I might wait till I'm married.
Wow.
And so that was coming up to my mind, and I was crying, and the only thing I could really get out of my mouth was like, have your way, Jesus.
Wow.
I just kept repeating that, have your way.
That's powerful.
And I've never experienced what's called like a manifestation of the Holy Spirit where your physical body is shaking or falling over or anything like that. I've never experienced that.
Or another way of saying it is trembling.
Trembling, exactly.
Yeah.
But I started to realize all of my muscles were extremely tense around my whole body.
Yeah.
And then in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe this is it. Maybe you're experiencing it. So this is something I've been like, Lord, is this real when people do this? Like, it's just been a background question in my mind.
Sure.
And so in the moment, I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe this is it. Maybe you're experiencing it. And I start trying to just be like, Catherine, relax, like just relax. And I could not relax my muscles. Like they were so tense.
Yeah.
It lasted for maybe like 15 minutes. And then I finally could just like relax. I stopped crying and I almost fell asleep.
Oh my God.
Like,
which is also an indication of the presence of God, which is this intense peace.
Exactly. It was like this super intense peace.
Yeah.
I almost completely fell asleep.
Oh my gosh.
And then after I was like, okay. I stood up, I went out on my balcony, I grabbed my journal, and I just started writing down what just happened, because I was like,
hold on a second. Let's look at this for a second.
Okay.
Like, this is so interesting because you're like describing this experience that you're having where you're experiencing like multiple different dynamics and aspects of the presence of God.
Yes.
There's like this like weightiness to it. There's this like where your body is physically reacting and it's like trembling and before, and then it shifts where you're also you're also crying so it's moving on your heart.
I'm saying yes. I'm like, the topic came to mind, Russia, not being married, being willing to take that step,
right? And so
I'm
you're
saying
like,
yes.
So like that you enter into this conversation, and then that kind of shifts to like this really intense peace where you almost fall asleep. That's so funny. But it's like, I think, I think it's so cool that you kind of had that experience all in one, because sometimes when the presence of God, manifests, it looks different. Yeah. It looks different for different people. It looks different. And depending on when it is, I mean, it's, I feel like different people have had those experiences at different times. Yeah. You had it all in one time. And that's so interesting. I haven't heard very many stories like that.
And it was in the middle of my apartment with nobody here. Like, there was no, I can't emphasize this enough. There was no hype building up to it or expectancy even in my heart. Right. It came out of the blue.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay, so you have this experience, and then it kind of resides a little bit, and you go out onto your balcony.
I've got to write this down.
Yeah,
I've got to write it down.
Come on.
Which that brings up a big point I wanted to say while telling my story. Write down your Jesus moments. Like, write down your experiences, because
oh my gosh,
preparing for this podcast, I was going back and rereading a lot of the things I was writing down, and I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot. Like, I actually forgot that Amy would have that dream.
Wow.
I forgot some of the pieces that made me realize this is the Lord sending me.
Yep. we think we won't forget.
We think we won't forget.
We think this is so significant. Like, I'll remember the details. But the problem is we're in relationship with Jesus, and there's fresh stuff happening in our lives all the time.
Yeah.
And the further you get away from it in time, it's just like, it just gets foggier and foggier. So you got to write it down. It's like, it's close to when it happens so that you can look back. And you know how many times I've looked back at I call it my prophetic history.
Yes.
And really what I'm just meaning is my history with Jesus.
Yeah.
But you know how many times I've gotten fresh encouragement from my past self with stuff, like you said, where I forgot it was this significant. I forgot it was this many different things.
Right.
I mean, you were talking about earlier too, you looked at the history of your dreams, and you found a pattern.
Yes.
That's something you can't even realize whenever you're just having them in the moment, maybe.
Exactly.
But you look back and you're able to look at them, have them in front of you, and you look at multiple ones at a time. You're like, oh my gosh, there's a consistent pattern, and the Lord speaks to you through that stuff.
So I had the open invitation from my friend in Moscow, and I went back. I was like, I'm going to look at every dream that has to do with Russia that I've had since I started writing my dreams. And I wouldn't have done that if there hadn't been that invitation. I wouldn't have been able to if I hadn't have been faithfully writing them down.
How much do people miss out on what the Lord's doing in their life because they don't write stuff down whenever it happens? People forget.
Exactly.
I mean, this is a significant thing that God has dealt with his people throughout human history. You see it all throughout the Old Testament, especially. He commands his people, write these things down. Remember. Yeah. And, obviously that's what the scriptures are, is different people under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, of course, but they're writing down the faithfulness of God and the storyline of God. And for the people who wrote the scriptures, it is their prophetic history.
Yeah.
It's their personal prophetic history.
Exactly.
It's their story with Jesus. And, but we like that same urgency and command or invitation, whatever you want to say, is for us and our relationship with Jesus.
So can we pick back up?
Please?
Okay. So at this point, that is the most powerful encounter I've ever had with the Holy Spirit to date. Yeah. I just had that, and I'm like, okay, I need to take this so seriously. I'm going to do another fast.
Wow.
So I decide to do a 21-day Daniel fast. Because I'm like, Lord, I just need to be so certain, as if I wasn't already. Looking back, I'm like, duh.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I was just like, I just want everything. I want everything possible. So I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to fast about it.
Well, Catherine, that's something significant too. It's like when you're in the midst of this, we've been calling it prophetic swirl, but just feel like an increase of activity of the Lord in your life, at least that you're aware of.
Yeah.
It oftentimes comes with that grace to sort of engage with it.
Yeah.
Which can translate to a grace to go and do these fasts.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had seasons where there's just this grace to fast and like where it feels easy. Oh my gosh, this is easy. And then there's times where I've tried to do extended fast when I don't have that. And it's so hard. And you just quit halfway through. Yeah. And so someone's like, how can you do back-to-back extended fast? And that's a huge dynamic of it, where like the Lord's hand is on you during this time in an increased way. And it came with that grace to be able to do those fasts.
Yeah. So I enter into 21-day Daniel fast, and honestly, I see nothing. There's no big like shift. There's no any other encounter, other like interesting prophetic words that random person gives me, no significant dreams. And so I'm like, okay, there's kind of nothing. End my 21-day fast. And so I'm like, okay, that's a little confusing,
Yeah.
But oftentimes we will fast and we're sowing into things in the spirit and we reap them later. I really believe in this principle that whatever you sow, you will reap. And I think fasting, you can see it the day after you finish your fast.
Sure.
You can see it during your fast, or you could see it down the line and you have no idea. So I actually think that by me fasting and doing this 21-day fast, I was just in constant conversation with my roommate, Alicia, about Russia, about all this stuff. And Alicia ends up talking to Dave Sliker, who is the president of IHOPU.
Yep.
And a couple months after my fast, or a couple weeks, so maybe like 2 weeks after my fast,
yep,
I have a meeting with Dave Sliker, and he invites me into something even bigger than what I could have imagined with Russia. And that is that IHOPU is doing their first year. They have the goal and the vision to offer their first year in 7 different languages.
Oh, wow.
One of those languages being Russian. And so he was hearing that from Alicia, my roommate, that I was thinking of moving back to Russia. I was kind of like seeking the Lord about it.
Yep.
And he's like, oh, we need to get her involved in what's going on. And so suddenly what was initially just an invitation to join a house of prayer in Moscow and kind of leave what I was doing here, do something with them, suddenly became everything I'm doing here, everything I've been a part of the last 4 years. It is a direct correlation and carrying on into the door that the Lord is opening for me in Russia and with the house of prayer in Moscow.
So all of a sudden, you get invited into this position with IHOP University.
Yes.
Where you're sort of a major piece of this curriculum that they have been developing for their partnership with Moscow, Russia, and their friends over there.
Yeah,
where they're able to engage with the IHOPU curriculum.
Yes, and actually offer the official year of IHOPU in language, which reaches way beyond Russia. It's lots of other countries that speak Russian as well, like Ukraine, Uzbekistan, many countries that are closed to just like an American passport going in.
Interesting.
Would now be open and be able to access an entire year of training. And so I was very much like, okay, this is happening.
Yeah.
This is happening. This is the Lord. I'm being sent.
Yeah. You're pulled into this position and you feel like this is a stopping point though.
Yes.
Unto actually being on the ground.
Right.
In Russia.
Right. And so in my mind, I'm like, this is happening. I'm going to take some steps of faith, like what you did.
Sort of positioning yourself.
Starting to position myself. So I start fundraising.
Raising support.
Yeah. Raising support. I stepped down from my job.
Yep.
So I quit my job.
Yeah.
I'm like, Lord, you're going to provide.
Yes.
I'm going to be moving in a couple months anyways.
Right.
Okay. It's like, as soon as I get my budget, I'm going to just be moving. I start stepping down from different positions I was in with different, ministry outreaches.
Yep.
And really just expecting to move. Zoom out for a little second so that everyone's on the same page. All of this is happening in April, May, June of 2020.
Oh, no.
Let the reader understand.
Wow.
Everything gets completely shut down for international travel.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
For the first time in my life, I am actually not able to just get a visa and fly to Russia.
Wow.
I can't.
Yeah.
Even if I had everything in place, even if I had all the support, all the everything, like I could not do it.
Wow.
It was impossible.
Yep.
And so that's just that in my mind, I was like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. School year starts in September, late August. I was like, it is going to happen. And I am going to get in the last minute. It's going to be like the 11th hour. I remember I said that a lot. It's like, it's the 11th hour. Like, I'm going to just squeeze in right before the school starts.
Well, because we're also at this time we don't really know how long things are going to be closed.
Right. We had no idea.
At first it was like, well, it'll be closed for like some weeks. And then it was like, well, we got to do it another month. And then it just kept piling on.
Just kept staying longer and longer and longer.
Stuff just kept getting postponed. Well, okay, maybe we'll do the Olympics. Okay, the Olympics are postponed.
Right.
Maybe things will be open. Well, no, that's going to be canceled too. And it just like time kept going by. And it was just like, no, things weren't opening up anytime soon.
Yeah. And in this time, June 17 is my birthday. We go to Dallas and just celebrate my birthday. Me, you, and my roommate, Alicia.
Yep.
While we're there, we visit Upper Room. Ties back in.
Wow,
Upper Room. Interesting.
A little Upper Room action.
Right. But I remember that that prayer meeting at Upper Room was so perfect. Everything I needed to hear from the Lord was in that set.
Wow.
And the biggest thing, we like yelled it in this prayer meeting, is the phrase, "You are on time, always on time."
Wow.
And I remembered that because I was like, yes, you're on time. You're always on time. I'm going to get to Russia by September. That was what I was thinking.
Man, yeah.
And that was what I was praying and proclaiming and feeling.
Yeah.
And, well, I think we can just kind of fast forward a little bit, that up until like very, very recently.
You spent an entire year of being in this place of limbo, being like, Lord, like, hold on a minute. Like, I thought that all this activity, all this stuff.
The end of the summer came, the fall came, the start of the school year came.
You even raised a partnership
team. I raised
some
partnership. Like, all of this was happening and nothing was budging.
People are asking you every few days, every couple weeks. Catherine, oh my God, what are you still doing here?
Yeah. Like, are you still going to Russia?
Are you still going to Russia? What's the deal? I thought that was a whole thing.
Yeah.
And you're just like left like, I think so. I still am believing for that. And I don't know what's going on with that. And it, like, month after month goes by until we get a year down the road. And the reason why I have the confidence to make this announcement and why I wanted to tell the story is because last Friday, less than a week ago, got the news that finally Russia is issuing visas again and is opening up to Americans. Wow.
And, as I'm reading this, I'm like tearing up as I'm just realizing I'm like, I have to call everybody. I just call all my friends.
Yep.
Like, suddenly all of the like the wait is over of me being in the unknown, and I can actually start planning again.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And it's just, I'm like looking back over this year and I'm like, Lord, why like this? Like, why has this been the journey? Why was this the reason? Like, why was this the way that you took me? And there's still some unknown, some risk. Like, obviously I'm not there. I'm not in Russia.
Just kind of like what I was sharing. Like, we're still in the middle of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's been such a sovereignty as to why I'm here. I've been able to do things here with IHOP-U, with the Russian department, that I would have never been able to do if I was over there.
Yeah.
I think it actually has been critical for the assignment that the Lord gave me with doing IHOP-U in Russian. It's been critical that I've been here this year.
Yep.
And actually about 2 weeks ago, I was kind of hinted at a conversation of there being a potential of me having like a bigger position at IHOP-U if I chose to stay.
Oh, wow.
And so I've been just these last 2 weeks having this conversation with the Lord. I was like, if something opens up, if Russia does open up, was that really what you were saying to me? Or is this what it looks like?
Wow.
Or should I stay? Or should, all of this stuff. And I really just felt in my heart this past 2 weeks is like, no, I'm supposed to go. Like, that was the whole thing. That was the whole swirl of what you were saying and my dreams and different things with leaders. It's like all these things. I was like, no, that actually is it. And then this news comes this week. So it felt very timely to me because I had kind of decided in my heart, I was like, you know what? Now I'm like sticking it out. I'm sticking it out, and I'm in it to wait as long as I need to wait. But I'm not going to be deterred as to what you actually were speaking to me, where you actually were calling me. And then I get the news that they are issuing visas now of all types.
Wow.
So yeah, that brings us up to speed.
This is huge because it felt like there was this year of silence.
Yes.
And that's the thing too, is like you said, you're not there yet. However, this is a major development.
Because it was impossible.
Because it was impossible for a year. And now all of a sudden, you've always said, for people who have asked you over the last year, okay, when are you going to go to Russia? You go, whenever they open up, I'll have about a 2-month countdown, basically.
Right.
In the process that it takes to get the visa and to get situated.
Yeah.
And so it feels like that the countdown started again.
Right.
Is that how it feels for you?
Yeah, it feels like, there's actually some movement, and I can start to plan and start to get the car moving again in the direction you pointed me at a year ago.
Wow.
And so what has it been like in waiting? I want to kind of talk about that a little bit and explore.
Because I've been friends with you through it all. Right. I've seen it, and I know that it has been difficult for you. And for anyone who would experience something like this, I think, I want to just dive into it. And we've talked about this is where we wanted to go and talk about this discussion. It is not an uncommon journey.
Right.
That you have been through. It's not unique to you. I mean, we were thinking about different people even in the scriptures where they were revealed by the Lord, something that he had for them.
Yeah.
And then it was a long time of waiting.
Right.
In between. I'm thinking about one just off the top of my head. I'm thinking Joseph. Okay. He has these like dreams about like this call on his life to be in this place of leadership over his brothers and in this place. And I mean, we're talking about dreams and prophetic words in our stories, but Joseph gets these destiny dreams, if you will.
Yeah.
And then he goes through an entire crazy journey of where that's not his reality. He doesn't.
Not at all.
Not at all. He doesn't.
As far from that being a reality as possible, actually.
And he doesn't step in to the kind of what was revealed to him as a young man till much later down, like decades down the road.
Yeah.
And, I'm thinking about, there's lots of people in the scriptures. You look at, in Hebrews, you look at the hall of fame is what they call it. They where it kind of goes down the line of different people throughout throughout human history in the scriptures that they had promises over their life from the Lord. They even waited and believed in those promises without ever seeing a fulfillment.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah. We're not guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed.
We're not even guaranteed. And yet for them it was counted as righteousness.
Yeah.
For engaging with the promises and for believing for them.
Yeah.
To even in their lifetime. And obviously maybe the best example is Jesus himself, the prophesied Messiah.
Yeah.
Who is prophesied about for thousands of years and all throughout human history, the Jewish people believing for this like corporate promise of Messiah, and like obviously, thousands, millions of them dying over thousands of years, never seeing the promise, but engaging with it and believing for it until it was finally fulfilled, obviously, whenever he comes. And yet there's still so many biblical promises and prophecies concerning his second coming
that haven't been fulfilled yet.
That haven't even been fulfilled. Yeah. And so when you kind of bring that, you look at the scriptures, you look at those guys and those girls who are doing and did the same type of thing that you and I are talking about. That really gives me, I don't know if you feel the same way, it gives me a lot of freedom to be able to talk about our stories with the Lord and not be in this place of completion.
Yeah, for
because I'm currently in this place of I'm in the midst of the prophetic swirl.
Yeah.
And I believe that I'm going to be moving very soon, fly in July, right? If I get to a place where it doesn't work out like I think it's going to, it doesn't work out like the way that the prophetic swirl is indicating, I'm actually in great company. Yeah. It actually doesn't point to the fact that the words weren't real.
That you heard wrong.
That I heard wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe I heard off on some things, but that's not an indicator.
Yeah.
If it doesn't happen in the timeline that I think it's going to. Because like I said, we just went down the biblical examples. Heck, I'm sitting right in front of a very personal example.
Right.
Of someone who has all these prophetic promises, if you will. And it hasn't looked like what you thought it was going to.
Right.
And I'm also thinking about what if it works exactly like I think it's going to? What if it is a make room in June, you'll fly in July, and I'm gone out of Kansas City in July. It's just boom, boom.
Yeah.
What do we do with the differences in the stories? Because I think if that was to happen with me, I'm hoping it does, that's actually much more unusual, I think.
Right.
And I've seen that happen with different people where it's just like, man, the Lord, suddenly it's time to move, and it's shifting around things, and there's an acceleration in their lives, and it's how it is. But just as common, if not maybe more common, is what your experience has been.
Yeah.
Why is that? What is the deal with, and how do we reconcile the differences in those stories?
Yeah. It's so interesting because I know this past year has been filled with conversations with Jesus, prayers, heartache that I would never have had if I wouldn't have thought I was moving last year. Mm-hmm. Like, my walk with the Lord has looked different.
Yeah.
The expression of love I have for Jesus has looked different. All of those things have looked different because I've been in a season of waiting.
Yeah.
And it's been hard. Like, it has not been easy. I'm looking back even now and I'm like, did I do it well? Wow. Like, I'm just like asking myself, did I actually do it well? Like, did I wait well?
Wow.
And like, I'm just going to have to trust the Lord's voice on that, because like I can see all the places where I went wrong and where I was just frustrated with the process and angry and didn't want to sing, "You're never gonna let me down." I just wouldn't sing it because I felt so let down by the Lord.
Absolutely.
And
well, even that emotion that you're describing right there, you're in good company.
Yeah.
Biblically. I mean, you look at, I'm thinking about Abraham, right? He's promised a son, and later on in the scriptures, I can't remember if it's Romans or if it's Hebrews. I think it's I'm not going to guess. I can't remember, but it says that it was counted as righteousness, his faith, and he said he did not waver in the promises.
Right.
And we're like, wait a minute. We know that he wavered because he actually has the illegitimate child to prove that he wavered.
Right.
And so that's such an interesting thing to look at too, is how we know the sort of the weakness of our human frame, and we know how some days we're good and some days we're bad. And actually understanding that Jesus doesn't measure our faithfulness or whether or not we wavered by the day to day or the week to week, but actually in the years and the decades. And here's the truth, Catherine, is we're a year down the road and you still believe.
Right.
Isn't that something?
Like, I'm a year down the road or in 6 months, whatever, sitting in Moscow, I will sing like, "You never let me down." And looking back and seeing it, like, and really, really believing it. But it was so hard to sing in the midst of it. it was so hard to actually engage that way.
And the Lord actually says of you that you didn't waver.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Even though, and he even though you look at the day to day, you had some days where you really were engaging with it. Some days you were just like, I don't know if I believe this stuff anymore.
Yeah.
But he really does measure over the years.
And Mike Bickle talks about like letting the Lord like make the headlines for your life and believe in the headlines. Wow. You know, like we are in the trenches of the day to day, but then the Lord has a headline over Abraham that's he was unwavering in his faith.
Wow.
It's like we can actually believe that about ourselves, and we can believe the voice of God over our lives.
That's awesome.
And believe that headline.
You get to accept that headline because he made it over you.
Exactly.
I love that. I think something else that has been so important to us, and just we've discussed this so much in this, it's a teaching that really came out of our time at IHOPU, is this idea of being sent.
Yes. Yeah.
And I want to just hit on this for a minute because we had a professor, his name's Samuel Whitfield, where this is kind of
amazing.
Yeah, we both love him. He's this guy who really has emphasized this concept to us in a couple of our classes that we took at IHOPU. But it's this idea of taking a look at different people in the scriptures that the Lord sort of sent into these different places, and that talking about that concept, the difference between being sent and just going.
Yeah.
And, in some ways we're called to go, or it's a good thing to go. It's a good thing to be willing. It's a good thing to, the Lord uses missionaries and young people who are they got the zeal of the Lord to do missions, and I just want to go.
Yeah, and they go for those 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's great,
Absolutely. But then he talks about the difference in being sent.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've always said about myself is I felt like I've engaged in different things throughout my life where it was just on my heart, and so I went and did it, and I kind of went, and it was more of a go moment. But then there's a couple times where I feel like I was really sent and pushed into this,
right,
by the Lord. And I'd say one of the big ones was whenever I came to Kansas City, and where He really flipped my whole life upside down and to get me here.
Yeah,
and it's almost like. I always think about it as like when Jonah got sent to Nineveh and tried to go to Tarshish.
Yeah.
But he was being sent to Nineveh. And so it didn't matter. He was trying to go to Tarshish. Like he was going to get thrown off the boat, like the whale was going to pick him up. And and those are like those more intense moments of your life where it's like, no, this is a major assignment or a major like location in which I am positioning you and want you in.
Yeah.
And so I've always said of myself, like if I'm going to move from Kansas City, I want to feel like I'm being sent.
Yeah.
I've had different opportunities to go doing this and that over my 4 years here. But it never felt like big enough, significant enough, because the way I got here was really significant, and I felt sent here. So if I'm going to leave here, I want to be sent out of here.
It has to be as equally as significant.
At least as equal. And that's what I'm feeling like. Oh, it's gotten to that place.
Wow. Yeah.
Where it is as dramatic is what got me here.
Yeah. But we see, and this teaching from Samuel really impacted me.
Yeah.
Being here, coming from doing missions, to where I was like, if I'm going to go back, I want to be sent. I want it to be from the Lord. And so having that in the back of my mind with the big swirl last year, I was like, this is it. This is the Lord sending me. But actually the example Samuel gave was Paul. He has his conversion on the road to Damascus. The Lord actually gives him what he's going to do. You're going to preach the gospel to the Gentiles.
Wow.
He says that to, is it
Ananias?
Yeah, Ananias. Yeah. So they talk about it. You know that this is what Paul
just
understands.
Just like he gets his marching
do.
orders.
But then it's actually a long time before he is sent out from the church at Antioch. It's like 10 years, 15 years.
Most scholars believe it's over a decade later.
Right. And so Paul has his assignment, and it takes that long before he actually is sent.
Wow.
From the leaders, from the church, from everybody. They're in a prayer meeting, and they feel the Holy Spirit saying, send Paul and send Barnabas out.
Yep.
And so I found myself in a moment like that where I felt like I was being sent.
Wow.
It felt like from the Lord, and then I'm just waiting. And so I want to end kind of with a question for you.
Please.
Because I just think, you have a lot to offer with this.
Okay.
What would you tell people or say to people that had a promise, had a word from the Lord, and waited for it, and now it's actually impossible for whatever reason?
Oh, wow.
It will never happen.
Wow.
Which these situations do happen in life. Like something happens, something shifts, even like someone dies.
Yeah.
You have a word for someone, they pass away.
Yeah.
That it is actually impossible for that word to be true and to hold on to it. So I don't know. Can you speak into that?
Gosh, Catherine, that is an intense idea and an intense question. Yeah, that's very personal. It's very personal to me too, because I do have things in which I felt like I had so many different prophetic things concerning something that died in my life, where it's impossible for, you mentioned those kind of things. Maybe you have a word for somebody that someone is gonna get saved in your life that doesn't love Jesus, and then they die. Yeah. And it's like, I had this, like, it can't happen. It actually can't happen. And so you're like asking, like, what do you do with something like that? Yeah. Man, that is such a good question. I guess I would just tell you, you have got to engage with the Lord about it. You have to hash it out, because if you don't, and he can he can handle it. Okay, that's first of all, that's what I want to say. He can handle that ugly, raw conversation that comes with something where it's just like, Lord, you said this. I'm even thinking of like when Jesus comes to Lazarus's tomb. Yeah. And Mary comes to him and it's like, Lord, you said that my son, like this, or not my son, my brother, that this wouldn't end in death, and it's ended in death. Yeah. Every once in a while, there is an opportunity for resurrection, actually. Like that is a possibility. We follow a Jesus who raises stuff from the dead. And so that makes the conversation even more interesting. Because when is it actually over? Yeah. And I think, even physical death isn't always the end of that particular story, because we serve a God who raises the dead. Right. And so I also think about King David, whenever the Lord told him that the baby that was conceived through sin with Bathsheba was going to die, he fasted and prayed for an extended amount of time. I think it was a week, that the baby would not die. He contended for it. Yeah. And then whenever the baby died, it's like he accepted it. Yeah. He was like, you know what? I did my part, if you will, in sort of engaging with the Lord and doing everything I know how to do of, begging the Lord for mercy. And whenever the Lord made it clear to him, actually, that's not going to be part of this story. He sort of accepted it and cleaned himself, basically took a shower. Yeah. Right. In layman's terms, and ate and broke his fast and decided to move on with his life. And it not necessarily coming to a place of understanding.
Yeah.
But
you may never understand.
Absolutely.
Actually.
I think I have things in my life where I may never understand why they didn't happen.
Yeah.
I don't know. I honestly, I don't know why some things, and even I'm talking about the impossible things.
Yeah.
Can't happen. I don't know why, because I was so sure there was so much activity of the Lord and feel like he was the one who made me believe, and contend. But that is, I don't know. I threw out a couple different models. I threw out Mary at Lazarus's tomb.
Yeah.
Of letting yourself be in that tension of Lord, you really did say, and I don't understand. Letting that really cut you. Let that really pierce your heart. Not trying to polish all that up with spiritual language, like her sister Martha does.
Right.
Definitely go read that story if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, and the differences in the way Jesus responds to those two sisters. But then also, you look at David, same type of thing. He didn't want this to happen, so he engaged in every way that he knew how, and yet the Lord made the finality of it clear.
Yeah.
And so then he accepted it with the confidence that God is good.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what kind of comes from that wrestle. You can believe that the Lord is good because the Bible says, but there's a different type of belief from your experience. He has shown you in your relationship with him that he is who he says he is.
Yeah.
And he sort of forms that confidence in your heart, which allows you to move forward in your life and live from that place of not fully understanding all the dynamics of your life, especially when it comes to the prophetic.
And actually believing that the Lord is good, that statement of faith, Lord, you are good. It's actually really scary because it's only proven when it's been tested, it's been tried, when it's been in the crucible of disappointment and promises unfulfilled. Yeah. And you still say the Lord is good. It's that statement means so much more 10 years down the road. Mm-hmm. Still moves his heart when you're 18 and you say it with no heartache.
Definitely.
Still moves his heart. But when you're, 28, 38, 48, and you've seen real disappointment and you've engaged with the Lord through all of that, continue to have the conversation, and you still say he is good, that has been proven and tested by fire.
Absolutely. And I think the Lord I think he invites us into that experiential knowledge of his goodness. I don't think he wants us to just believe it because he says so.
Right.
Even though that's a great starting point. I love Psalm 34. It says, taste and see that the Lord is good.
Yeah.
And it's another way of saying it. It's let that be your experience and your perception of me.
And it's actually looking back at 58, 68 and saying, no, actually the Lord is good. Mm-hmm. That's, it's not just a head knowledge, something that I'm choosing to believe, even though my experience has been so bad.
Right.
It's actually, I see that the Lord is good now. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a place that the Lord has brought us into. Yeah. Even we're still so young.
So young.
And we're so early in our journeys with him. And yet I feel we're both at that place where we have wrestled through some major moments with him. And when I say moments, I mean extended seasons. Yeah. Months and years.
Didn't feel like a moment.
Didn't feel like a
during
moment.
The time.
Maybe it will in the span of our whole life.
Right.
But where we are able to operate and move forward knowing we don't understand it all.
Yeah.
But yet we're confident. There's this confidence that's been formed in us.
Yeah.
It doesn't just come with us conjuring it up.
Right.
It comes with him forming it in us.
Yeah.
Where we can say with confidence, no, Lord, you are who you say you are.
Right. So wherever you are in the spectrum, people listening in, people watching, like if you have an accelerated season where you feel like everything is coming and you're getting all these prophetic words, or, you know, the Lord's actually pushing you and sending you somewhere. If you felt like the Lord did that, but nothing happened and you're waiting and you're like, when was that going to happen, Lord? I remember you telling me all this. Wow. Or if you're like, yeah, I thought it was, I waited and then something happened and I don't understand, but it didn't happen. Like, all of that is valid. Talk to the Lord.
Absolutely.
Talk to the Lord. Engage with him. Don't forget your heart. Don't let your heart get hardened or bitter, or just cover it in spiritual language. I love that you said that. Like, actually talk to the Lord about it.
Absolutely. I think that's so key. And contend for the things that he's spoken to you until they die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what David did. And if they died prematurely, you feel like, then don't move on from that.
Yeah.
And have those ugly cries.
Right.
With Jesus. And that actually moves his heart. Those specific, I mean, it says when Mary had that interaction with him outside of Lazarus's tomb, it says the spirit within Jesus groaned.
Yeah.
And then it's verses later where it says that he wept. And there's a powerful moment that it is to be had in those seasons. Right. So, man, what a powerful,
what a podcast,
personal question too.
Sorry, I threw that in at the end.
Yeah. Well, man, I wanna just wrap up in a few minutes, but guys, I hope that you just enjoyed listening to Catherine's story of how she's moving to Moscow.
Yes.
And how I share in the episode previous to this one, part 1, hopefully you've listened to that one too, where I'm moving to Dallas. And guys, we're not sharing these stories from this place of like, oh, everything worked out already. Yeah. Guys, we're right in the middle of this, and there is a chance, there is a possibility that we look like fools.
Right.
And, that's okay. I think both of us have established in our hearts that we're okay with that possibility because we're moving forward in faith.
Right.
And this is what it looks like for us.
Yeah.
But guys, I want to just invite anyone who is listening to, if you have been listening to Catherine's story specifically and all that the Lord is doing and is moving her to Russia, and you feel stirred, I want you to you don't even have to feel stirred in this moment, but I want to invite you to pray about partnering financially with my friend Catherine. I think it has been such a privilege to get to walk with you over we've been friends for 4 years now, but the last couple of years of specifically surrounding this storyline with you and being able to engage and process through a lot of this stuff with you. But man, I just want to say for anybody who's listening, I believe in Catherine Clark's story. Yeah. And I believe in what the Lord has for you. And it's been an honor being with you in this time of preparation. And maybe that season isn't over. Who knows? I think that it is. We are in an acceleration time. And that's why we're doing this podcast. But in these months leading up to this next season of being sent, which I believe is very soon, I want you guys to pray about partnering with Catherine Clark financially specifically, because she's a missionary. That's how she is able to operate and do what the Lord has for her. Yeah. And I think that she has a critical piece to play in Moscow, in St. Petersburg, wherever that leads to. Man, so I want you to reach out to her. Reach out to her through phone calls, text messages, emails, DM her on Instagram. Like, get a hold of her. Don't let this moment pass by, especially if you're feeling stirred. Yeah. I mean, she's going to be doing her own, some partnership stuff over the next weeks and months. And it's going to be, trying to develop a greater partnership team and get, sufficient income for the mission that the Lord has for her. But I want you to take initiative, anyone who's listening, and I want you to reach out to her because I believe in what the Lord's doing in you.
Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I could say the same for you. Mm-hmm. I feel like the thing I love about your ministry, Nathan, is just how you inspire others. You inspire others to reach for more, if it's in freedom from like sexual bondage, if it is in the realm of Holy Spirit, inspiring them to reach for more.
Wow.
If they're very charismatic, inspiring them to know the Bible, like you know the Bible. And so, yeah, I just wanted, I mean, I could say the same for you guys. Like anybody listening, if you are stirred by Nathan's story and you're like, wow, the Lord is sending him to Dallas. There are some big things like 500 books to teenagers talking about freedom from pornography and how Jesus is better. Like, I want to give to that. I want to support someone who is creating content that is going to result in those types of things. Like, reach out to Nathan, join his team. I know he's going to be developing his partnership team as well, especially like just moving costs, moving expenses.
Yeah.
Like, please show him the love. Send him through all the things he can. I'm sure he can tell you what, but Cash App and text message and all the stuff. I know he also really cares for his partnership team. I'm just thinking of this. Like, you have stewarded your partnership team so well while I've seen you. And I know that he prays for his partners and he actually cares for them. So it's just hitting me as I'm talking about it. Like,
because you've been a part of my partnership team. I mean, we've been a part of each other's partnership teams. We're both in missions.
Right.
And we both live on support.
Yeah.
And yet we both believe in each other's missions and have been a part of each other's teams in different extents, sometimes financially, sometimes just through prayer.
Yeah. So, give to my brother Nathan.
Come on.
For sure.
Man. Anyways, man, this has been awesome.
It's been great.
These 2 episodes, I hope that you listen to both of them. If you just listen to this one first, go back, listen to the one before this. Guys, this, if any podcast has been Jesus people sharing Jesus stories to provoke a greater love for Jesus, I think that's what this one has been.
Yeah.
It's been such a fun privilege to get to do these last couple hours with you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah.
Thank you for helping me share mine.
We're doing it. We're moving.
It. Yeah. And we're saying it.
We're saying it. Exactly.
We're in faith. So guys, make sure you share this podcast and the one before this with your friends. Yeah. Make sure you guys subscribe to Spotify podcast, Apple podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and you'll get a little notification whenever I put on new stuff.
Yeah.
And man, we love you guys. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much.
We'll put some more episodes out soon. All right. See ya.